Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for meeting with me again. I know you're super busy. I wanted to talk to you about, first of all, again, your book, this book.
Yes.
It's so good. Like I was saying last week, but this week I want to talk to you about chapter two. Once again, oh my gosh, I had so many aha moments. It was actually kind of scary. So in chapter two, it's called Business as a Form of Self-Expression. There was just so many amazing things in here. And I was wondering if you could give a quick little overview of chapter two, and then I want to talk about the type of business we choose.
Well, how about you give us an overview of chapter two and what do you like about it?
Oh my gosh, good for you. Okay, well, I liked a lot about it. So there was nuggets in every single part of it. Like in the number one was the type of business we choose. In there, you said ultimately, if an entrepreneur wants to be as successful as they can be, they have much higher odds of succeeding starting with a business model that suits their personality and traits than it does to look for the model with the highest success rate and hope they can take it up to their height.
Mm.
Wow.
It makes a huge difference, I'm telling you. A lot of people will do that. They'll, especially if they get a buyout or like a business, a C-level executive gets a buyout and they decide, oh, I'm going to go and buy a franchise. So they have enough money they can buy whatever they want. And a lot of times, especially if they have business degrees, things like that, they'll start looking at which businesses tend to be the most successful. And clearly in Canada, I mean, Tim Hortons is just it's a no-brainer, right? It's licensed to print money. But on the other hand, if the lifestyle of running a Tim Hortons doesn't suit you, when things go wrong and you actually have to step into the business, then it can be arduous to run one of them if that's not somebody's forte. I mean, it's one of the you know one of the most highly one of those industries where you actually have to hire a lot of people, have to train a lot of people, you have to be there a lot of hours, and I mean in the bigger centers and things like that, obviously that's not an issue. It's usually just the initial setup cost, and then within you know months, if not a year at the most, they're up and running and life is grand. But in some of the smaller locations, I mean, finding staff can be a problem, doing things can be a problem. It's being able to step in when you need to and get the job done. That's part of running a company. And if you don't like the way the company runs, that's not your personality type, then you probably bought the wrong business.
Oh my gosh. So good, right?
Mhm.
And skipping on to number two, it says the way we deal with others. Oh my gosh, that was interesting.
What is
Most
it?
people,
What'd you get?
oh yeah, like I've got notes everywhere through. And the first part of it was most people think they can separate their personal life from their business life, and how they deal with one aspect is separate from the other. And then in there you said, this makes me laugh, right?
Uproariously.
Well, if you could expand just a little bit on that part, that was, oh my gosh, it's, yeah.
And to me, it's kind of self-explanatory. So
Oh, it's okay, yeah, yeah,
it's
you're right. It's,
well, no, I'm asking, like, when you read it, what kind of images conjured up in your mind? What do you think? What do you see?
yeah, well, I totally got that part because it is hard to separate sometimes when we as business owners, it's, separating personal and business and, trying to keep them separate and not crossing them over, especially if you're working closely with a family member, a good friend, and, you're socializing with them, but you also have business. There's definite roles for each individual person in each role, I guess. And so it can be really interesting to try to skip between the two. Like, for example, growing up, my family, they were all business owners. And so there was our home life and there was our business life. And it was really, really hard to separate the two because the business would come home where the personal would go to the business. So,
Right. Well, and a lot of that personality tends to get washed over too, especially if there's an issue at work that hasn't been fully dealt with. And if, say, hypothetically, somebody's in a situation where they are the powerhouse in the business, so they're the ones making the decisions. There's the ones that have to be on all the time. They're the ones that have to be in their role, maybe short and curt and to the point. But then when they come home, the relationship is completely different, and possibly their spouse is the one that's in the power role or in the power position at home. And if that happens, then you start to have the head knocking going on, because that whatever our true personality is, there's going to be a problem with it somewhere. So yes, we can chameleon to some extent, and some personality types are much more chameleon-like than others. But when we have that dichotomy going on, where it's one way at work and one way at home, inevitably there's some salt being grinded into the wounds in that case. And they're just, it doesn't make for a happy household, and it doesn't make for a happy workplace either. So the more we can kind of find a company or job or a position that matches the way we act and feel at home, or a home life as well, that fits into the way that we'd like to roll, to put it that way, then it makes it that much easier for us to be able to function and to be in a good position. So it's not necessary just because somebody is the CEO of a company that they are a high D personality. Some of them, and my D, I mean, in a disc type scenario where they're decisive, they're short, they're curt, they're to the point, they're results oriented. And so not everybody that goes into business has that kind of personality. Some of them prefer to be a little more soft-spoken. They prefer to think about things a little longer. They prefer to have other people come to them with the suggestions and things like that. And you absolutely can run a company that way. Apparently, I didn't know the man, but apparently Henry Ford ran his company much like that, judging by all the reports that I've seen and heard, he was okay being in a kind of a submissive role, even though he was a visionary of the company. And he positioned his company such that he had the best of the best all around him, people who could make decisions, people who did have the knowledge, people who could bring him that. And I suspect, because of the success of the company, that he also had a relationship like that at home as well. So that he may have had the final say, but he had a lot of decision makers giving them the input and the knowledge of what needed to happen, when, where, and how. And then that was because of the symbiosis at home and at work that he could create the phenomenal company that he did.
Wow, no, I didn't know that. That's another interesting nugget there too. So another thing in the book, sorry, I'm skipping forward a bit. There's just so many
No, go ahead.
here. Everybody's got to go out and buy this book. Seriously, it's so good. Okay, so another part that I thought was fascinating, it says, if you need to have other people around you to get energized and motivated, you may want to reconsider starting a home-based consulting business, so to speak. I'm not saying there aren't workarounds, but if you can start up your company within the consideration of your social styles, you'll likely be more successful. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That was awesome, right?
Says two extroverts that are in home-based businesses that do consulting. So yes, right? There are workarounds around that, absolutely. And I know that you and I both go to networking events. We both go to courses. We both go to places where we can engage and connect with other people, because if we stayed at home for any extended period of time, we'd go stir crazy, and the poor cats would be going stir crazy, going, get out, leave us alone. So yes, we don't want to turn into the crazy cat ladies, and we need to get out. But there are a lot of people that I know that are very smart and very competent in like business consulting in particular, and they work from home and they love it and they never leave the house. So they've structured their consulting business much differently than I have, because they're okay with that solitary lifestyle. But they tend to do much better at that solitary lifestyle, because working from home is definitely kind of isolating, if you will, if it's not managed in the right way.
Oh my gosh, that is so true.
Mhm.
I'm now getting out and going to the gym in the morning and trying to
Yep.
go for a walk during the day and groceries at night or whatever, because otherwise, yeah, you feel like you're cooped up inside. It's yeah. The next part of this was oh my gosh, there's so many in here. Ideally, you want to create a business that reflects your style, or modify your current business to reflect your style. Because if it doesn't reflect that, if we're really introverted and we hate to be around people, well, we just actually kind of reviewed that, went over that. So
Yeah.
that was
So
awesome.
yeah, if your listeners are introverts, doing at-home consulting is very good business to
Yeah,
go into. It's not nearly as social as you might think it is.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, and this is skipping ahead actually a couple pages in the book, but this is another nugget I thought was interesting. All too often, people get jobs because they think this is the only skill set I have,
Hmm.
or how much can I get paid to do that, or this is the way I have to go because this is the way my parents want me to go.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, so many people end up in an occupation that they may be really good at, but they hate, but they would be much better off at an occupation that they really like, but they aren't really good at, right?
Yes,
How many people?
absolutely.
Oh,
And it's so sad because I mean, most people have been shot down when they go to learn a new skill, that by the time they leave high school, they don't really do anything new after that. Now, it's getting a lot harder to do that with technology being what it is, and then it changes every 6 months. I mean, you almost can't even watch TV without knowing something about computers and how they work. So, I mean, you can't use your phone, you can't use all the things that stayed the same for about, I don't know, 20, 30 years. They change every 6 months now. So with that kind of change happening, we kind of have to learn new skills. But a lot of people will still not take on new skills that they don't know how to do because they've been taught that making a mistake is bad, that making a big mistake is failure. And that is so not true. I mean, you look at a little kid learning to walk and they're like down, bang, furniture, bang. It's like, and they get up and the parents are going, hey, get up, do it again, you're awesome. I mean, it's ridiculous to not think that the kid's going to bump their head, and it's even more ridiculous to think that they're going to quit just because they've bumped their head a couple of times. Like, it doesn't work that way. You get up and you try it again until you master it. And when people realize that the same thing can hold true in a career position, that it doesn't really matter what it is that you want to learn. You can learn anything. And if that's the thing you'd much rather be doing, then go and do it. Because if you're miserable in your occupation, you're just making everybody else around you miserable, even though you're really good at it. It doesn't matter. You're still making people miserable. Get out.
yeah,
Even if it's been a family-run business for the last 110 years. I don't care. It's not worth it. Hire somebody to take the company over and get out and, or sell it. Do what you got to
yeah,
do.
absolutely. I couldn't work in my father's business. It was very successful, and good on him. But oh, I worked in that company for a while and went, I can't do this. My mother worked there, and she was the accountant, and my brother, God bless him, stayed and worked with my dad for many, many years, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, wow. Um, the next part is the value we feel we bring to the table, and we kind of just touched a little bit on that. And there was one line in here that kind of, I don't want to read too much, but it said, when successful people feel shallow and unfulfilled, it isn't because they need to have more things or accomplish more tasks. It is that they need to identify what they really want in their heart to express, and they need to figure out a way to challenge themselves to do it. And then, it continues on from there. I thought that was interesting too.
It's phenomenal and mind-boggling to me how many people are um, content being discontent, if you want to put it that way. That they just go after, if I make more money and I get that trip, then I'll be happy. If I make more money and I buy that car, then I'll be happy. And it's a huge, when this happens, then something else of consequence will happen that I'll be happy. No, when you make more money and you buy the car, you'll have a car. Period, end of story. The novelty will wear off, I guarantee it. And in fact, happiness, as many people have written in many books, isn't a thing that a place that you arrive at. It's an emotion that you can feel, that you choose to embrace in moments, but it is fleeting, and you have to continually and perpetually reach for it and strive for it. And if the thing that you do isn't getting you there, then you really want to consider doing something different. It's not about getting that car, it's about the way you feel about the thing that you're doing. So some people can get that from going into sales. They go, yeah, I'm really good at being an accountant, but I really want to go into sales. And they'll make the same amount of money, but they feel like they're doing something different. They feel like they're contributing. They feel like they're in a different place. And when they have that conversation, or when they make that close, that's when they get that feeling of, that sensation of, wow, that was awesome, I want that again. And it's better than, wow, that's an awesome car, I want a bigger, better one. And so it's an intrinsic thing that I almost can't explain, other than this word fulfillment has to come in order to create enduring happiness outside of the shallowness of, this thing's going to make me happy, that person is going to make me happy, that external circumstance. It has to be focused internally, and the best, easiest way to create that is to do it through an occupation, because then you have and can gain the resources that you need in order to do it. But if you need to start with a hobby, start with a hobby. Do the thing that makes you happy in order to at least have some of that fulfillment in life, and then consider whether or not you'd be interested in starting a job at it. So for instance, somebody may be a stockbroker and they're making schwacks of money, and they're successful at it, but they hate it. And they decide, no, I just want to go in my woodworking shop and carve out birdhouses. It's like, whatever, doesn't matter what it is, then great. If you've created a lifestyle whereby wood carving bird cages isn't going to cut it, at least not for a while, until you hit that tipping point and make your successes at it, then at least start it off as a hobby, because then it will balance the financial need to pay the bills and things like that. And you may decide to downsize eventually and go, you know what, I don't need the house, I don't need the cars, I don't need any of that stuff. We'll take all the equity we have, we'll buy a smaller place, we'll pay, it'll be paid off, and I'll put some equity into doing some marketing for the birdhouses. And it sounds silly and foolish, but I'm telling you, you are in the wrong occupation, and you're taking up somebody's desk that would be much better suited to be a stockbroker. So get out. And there's probably a guy in a workshop somewhere that's miserable as hell and just really wants to become a stockbroker. Go and buy all his woodworking stuff, take over his business, he can take over yours, and the two of you will be rock stars in no time, because you'll figure out what you need to figure out in order to not only create the fulfillment, but also to create the economics that you see fit. I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to be a 7-figure income earner, but you can be, even if you're carving birdhouses. Like, it doesn't matter what the thing is, but it's more important that you're feeling fulfilled and self-actualizing than it is to just make money.
Well, it's so true, because everybody, you just want to feel good, right? Have the feeling of feeling good.
Well, and it feels really good to be a $1 million birdhouse carver.
Yeah. Well, and I know so many of us have been through, we've done the corporate thing, and then sort of fall into, we're doing what we love. Like, I know that I'm transitioning into doing what I want and what I love and what I really feel is the right direction for me. And I do have to say thank you to you for that.
Thanks.
I just want to interject a little story here. It's a little off the track a bit, but talking about mindset and something you said earlier on just made me think back to when I first met you. And this is kind of a testimony and a shout out to you. When I first met you, we were at a meeting and we had to stand up and talk about ourselves. And so I stood up and went, "Hi, my name is blah, blah, blah," and sat down. And everybody's kind of like, "Wow, okay," you know? And so a while later, with your coaching and a couple other people, it was, I could stand up and then I could kind of talk about myself and, yada, yada, yada. And then with a little bit more coaching from you, it was all of a sudden, I'm working for you by that point, and then all of a sudden I'm doing presentations, and I'm up in front of the room in front of all these people, and I'm talking about you and doing presentations and talking about me. Oh my gosh. Anyway, and then the next part was, oh, I have my own business, I need to do this and that, and then you helped me work through that. And then one thing I didn't ever want to do was cold calls. And so the little bit of coaching from you, now I love them. I do them probably 20, 25 hours a week, I guess. It's a completely different mindset. And it's actually fun, right? So anyway, just a shout out.
Yeah, you're going to love, I think it's the next chapter, but I'm not positive, where I talk about resistance. And you have nailed it on the head, where just because we have resistance about something like cold calling, going, no, I'm never going to cold call, I hate cold calling, doesn't mean we're not competent at it or can't be competent at it, and doesn't mean we don't necessarily have a talent for it. Because as you have well discovered, that even though you had a lot of resistance towards the idea, that once you started doing it, not only was it fun, but you got really good at it really fast. Like, you have a natural skill for that you never would have known if you hadn't allowed yourself to overcome the resistance and give it a try. And in your case, fortunately, necessity was the mother of all invention, or the mother of all creation, I guess. But I mean, you can absolutely do that as a conscious choice as well, and just go, you know what, I'm going to try this because I hate it. And that sounds ridiculous to some people, but I'm telling you, it is the best way to figure out who you are and what you're made of, is to every once in a while go and test the limits, pick something you absolutely refuse to do, and go and do it.
And it's fun, right? It's and it's going to be a big part of my business. So I actually really enjoy it, and I never thought that I didn't really like being on the phone hardly at all. And now I'm like, oh, here we go.
Nice.
So the next part of this chapter it's number 4. It says, the problem we have that's to be solved. And in here, you said there's a whole multitude of things that are going on when a person starts their company that they don't really get. They may think that they're just frustrated with the corporate world and they simply want to go out and start their own company. And I think, well, that's cute.
You like that, do you? And I'm sure it's because you can hear my voice in your head when you're reading that. That's cute.
You're right. You're right. Like, oh, I can so hear her. The book is really, really, really good. Gosh, I've got pink markers everywhere here. I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. I hope I didn't go too far ahead here. We all know that our thoughts lead to our feelings. I love this. Our feelings lead to our actions, and our actions lead to our results. But not everybody knows what the results are. And I'm saying here that they are your everything. If it's happening in your world, it's your results. If it's happening in your business, it's definitely your results. And again, the great part is when you take accountability for the process of creation, then you can change your results, resolve the issue that arise in your company, large or small, by changing your thoughts. Love that.
Nice. Because, a lot of people think, oh, my results are, my bank account. It's my car. It's my, the things that they can see in front of them. But what they don't realize, that it's also the problems that their staff bring to work. It's like, well, that's not my problem. Well, if you're the one complaining about it, then clearly it is your problem. If you don't mind your staff coming in and complaining about the stuff going on at home, then that's not a problem. But if they're doing it and it's problematic to you, then it is your problem. And And then people go, well, are you blaming me for their problem? No, I'm not blaming you at all. I'm just saying that you've created it. So the cool part about that is that you get to change it. And when people really get that if they've created the results in their life, all of them, that means that they have the power to be able to change anything that's going on for them. And this gets into a huge discussion, which, I love, and this part of it, the part that it takes a while to wrap your head around this. So I get it that somebody will backlash and go, well, I'm not in charge of everything that happens. I'm not in charge of the hurricanes. I'm not in charge of the tornadoes. It's like, well, yeah, but you live in the hurricane belt. Yeah, but you live in the tornado belt. Yeah, you are. Like, I didn't get in a tornado last week, but you did. So whose result is it? It's yours. Yes, that is what I'm saying. And when you really, really get that, things will change. So just to kind of give you a fun little example of this, I've been working with this idea or notion that when I plan out my winter, when I fly down to the States, what courses I take, things like that, in my head, I plan it so that I am going down there basically during the coldest parts of the year. So I don't care how cold it gets up here. I just know that I'm leaving for it. So even if you have a really mild, wonderful winter, I'm still leaving during the coldest parts of them. And for the most part, I hit those weeks like nail on the head. And it is awesome. It's not just because I'm thinking about them. It's because it's the way I live and operate. And it's become a belief of mine, not just a neat thought. So that's the level of kind of integration that you need to have in order to be able to start influencing these things. But even if you take it a little shallower and go, okay, I'm not making the kind of money I want to in my business. Great. It's not the market's fault. It's not the politician's fault. It's not your car's fault. It's not any of that crap. And it's not even your fault. But it is within your capacity to be able to change it. And the question is, what do you need to think, feel, and do differently in order to create the result that you want? And by accepting accountability for it or accepting that you have control over it somehow, some way, then you start to think differently, you start to ask questions differently, you start to operate and function differently, which then allows you to create different results.
Oh my gosh, it's funny. It's like you're reading my mind, and sometimes I think you can. That was the next thing I was going to read out. So I'm like, wow. Well, that was sort
How
of
much of that chapter did I just cover? She's just flipping through the book going, wow, you said exactly the same thing. It's like, yes.
I know.
Almost.
Yeah, the next line I went, oh, she just read my line. Okay. Well, that was chapter 2, and it was so awesome. And once again, thank you so much for taking the time out to let me talk to you about this. And next week, can we do chapter 3? Because that one looks fascinating too.
Absolutely. It's a good one.
It's on self-actualization.
Actualization.
Yeah.
Kind of over enunciate the actualization.
I know. And the importance of it. So, and you get into Maslow's. That looks really fascinating. So I'm pretty excited about that part too. So, yeah. Hey, listen, before I forget, how can people buy this book again? And how can they get a hold of you? And how can they find you and reach you and contact you?
Awesome question. Thank you. Is go to Amazon and do a search on business ownership mindset. And hopefully my lovely picture will come up in the book that Liz just showed you. If you have any issues at all, just go. Can you flip up so that they can see the spelling of my name? There you go. Go to there you go. And you go to michelle@awarenessstrategies.com and you can email me there. You'll get a little pop-up that says, are you a real person? Please enter ABC123. You type that in, hit enter, and it's all good. I will get your email. And if you would like to order multiple copies of the book, you can do so now on Amazon. But you can also email me, and I might be able to get a better pricing for it. It depends. Sometimes I've discovered that Amazon will secretly drop the price every once in a while. So you might get lucky and get it cheaper than I can actually get it for you for. Yeah, I think right now it's in sales mode. So you might be able to catch it right now if you're listening to this close to the recording time. If you can't get the price for less than $20, give me a shout and we can lower that and get you a bulk discount.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, listen, thanks so much for your time. Awesome. And I'll see you next week for chapter 3. And I just want to say one thing. You said about you taking or going away for your trips, and I was thinking back on all the times that you've gone on your trips, and you always leave the night before a storm.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking, I go, wait a sec.
And most of them are booked like 3, 4, 6 months in advance. So it's not like I just go, oh, okay, it's going to storm tomorrow. Let's leave, which is delightful. And I do know people that do that. That's also creating the results that they like. I tend to book mine because I'm going to events or I'm doing talks or things like that. And yeah, I book them ahead and somehow it works out and it's just delightful.
Wow. And before we go, another shout out. Michelle is an incredible business coach. I've used her actually. She also owns the company Success Therapy, and I have utilized that and the business coaching. I got to tell everybody here, she's the best. I have had massive mindset changes and overhauls with my work personally and in business with Michelle. So I highly recommend everybody to check out Success Therapy and check out Michelle because it's worth every moment of it.
Thanks, baby. That's awesome.
So listen, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. And yeah, thank you.
Sounds great. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.